Hi everyone, I am back with another chit chat video slash sharing my thoughts on a, I guess, very logical, philosophical topic. So I watched this channel called Daily Dose of Wisdom, and basically in the video, Frank Turek is having a debate, I guess. It's this guy named Alex. I've reacted to one of his videos before, and it was his video he made. I guess he might have went viral from this video, where he basically says, like, I tried to believe in God, but I'm still an atheist, or something along the lines of, like, he claims that he attempted to believe in God, but found, quote unquote, no proof. And I responded to that because I feel like the idea that belief in something can be forced upon someone is crazy. I think you have to choose to believe in something. Like, it doesn't really require logic to believe in something. Like, I can believe the sky is purple. Does that make it purple? No, but you don't need logic to believe something. But anyways, let me get into this video. So basically in the debate, and let me see if I can find the title of the video, is like, well, Frank Turek, by the way, I actually heard him speak in person. I didn't go to his actual debate because I couldn't, but he was a guest speaker at my church, the church that I go to here. So I did get to see him in person. I didn't end up purchasing his book, but I watched a lot of his videos, channels. He's very smart. And I think the way that he rationalizes things makes you really think. Because the first thing he does is talk about, like, does truth exist, essentially? And I feel like I really just see it as atheists, a lot of atheists, I feel like, have to jump through a lot of logical holes and fallacies in order to sustain their disbelief in God. And I mean that in, like, the most rational way, because we know it's just like they're denying reality in a lot of ways in order to try to pretend, or in order to justify their disbelief or non-belief in God. And again, it's not necessarily about, it just gets to a point where it's like you're being intellectually dishonest a lot of times. Like, if you have to question or have to say things such as math is subjective, and you have to say, well, you know, even though most people would agree on this morals, we're still going to say morals are subjective. It's like denying reality so that your worldview, so that you can sustain your worldview. It's like the, what is it called? What's it called in psychology? The intrinsic, wait, that's not the word. What is it called? I'll think of it eventually and then come back to it. I almost had it. Basically, it's a concept in psychology where you hold two opposing views. Like, if someone's arguing with you and you're aware that what that person is saying is right, but it goes against your worldview and it makes you uncomfortable, but you want to hold on to what you've already believed, even though the new information you know is true. What is that called? I hate when it's like I can always define it, but can't think. Not the first 5 minutes of this being me not being able to think of a word. It's like a discomfort. I'm about to have to look it up because I can't think of it right now. It bothers me. Sometimes I lose my words, but I know what I'm trying to say. Conflict between opposing ideas. What is this called? Cognitive dissonance. That's what we were trying to get to. So the cognitive dissonance, I feel like, is real in a lot of atheists, to the point that they will argue illogical things just to maintain their logical fallacies. So basically, Frank Turek and Alex are having a conversation, And here's the thing, the basis of science, and like if you're going to put all of your faith into science, right? And you're going to make a claim science is objective and science is truth and we can trust science. Like in order to trust science, shouldn't science have to be like factual? Like if science is true, that means human logic and reason has to be objective. Like to say that we're not supposed to question science, like this is what it comes down to. An atheist worldview is based around scientific quote unquote discoveries, scientific quote unquote fact, this idea that science is the most objective thing out there and science is proven and true and all of these things. And basically the claim of an atheist is they don't have to believe in God because science exists to explain all of these unanswered questions, and that science is truth, objective, and measurable. But then to come to that conclusion, you have to assert something that can't be proven through scientific thought or logic or reasoning. So it's very kind of like circular, because objective logic and reasoning is not a proven result of the quote unquote evolutionary process. And I remember saying this before, I think one of the biggest holes in evolution theory is like, where does intelligence come from? And like you can say it's like there's a lot of science quote unquote is just about making an assumption. The first step of the scientific method is, you make a thesis. Your thesis, what you're trying to either prove through some sort of trial, test, whatever. And your thesis has to start with something that you can observe. Like if you're going to do a experiment, you have to make sure like you're proving your thesis. And I guess people don't understand, like I have an actual scientific, like I have a BS. My bachelor's is in science. I have a BS in psychology, not a BA, a BS. So I had to take a lot of scientific questions. It's not like I don't, or science based classes. So it's not like I don't understand the science or I don't understand the basis of science. But the biggest thing, I'm like, y'all's cognitive dissonance, the cognitive dissonance is real, because essentially it's like you're trying to deny what you know is true to prove your worldview as an atheist, because the logic doesn't support a lot of atheist thoughts or assumptions about our world. So essentially, if your worldview is that you can trust science, and science is humans' creation, right? Like science is our way of trying to understand the world around us. We are observing, we are assuming things, and then we're using these experiments to prove our assumptions either true or false, whatever it is. Like the point of experience is it either supports your thesis or, it's not proven and you have to go back and start over again. And science, because a lot of science is based on assumptions, right? And assumptions are subjective, and you have to go through like so much testing and so much, like in order for something to become like factual. It's just like at the end of the day, as an atheist, you really don't have proof that anything matters. And so your entire I'm sorry I said it like that, but it's like, it's being completely honest. Like I like to think, like you can't have logic without believing objective truth. If you don't believe in an objective truth, there's no point in even arguing or having a conversation with somebody about anything, because you either stand on an objective truth, or everything we argue about, everything we say, if everything's subjective, if there's nothing objective in this life, then none of what we say, do, how we live our life, none of that matters. Like nothing actually matters without objective truth. And the basis for objective truth can't exist in an atheistic world that claims everything is subjective, everything is relative, and has to make assumptions about everything, and you can't even prove your own logic, you can't prove your own consciousness according to science because you can't observe it. Like, there's so many things that science just does not have the ability to explain a lot of things. And when I made my last video talking about why I don't put all my faith in science, and how an atheist has to put all their faith in science, and science is subjective, science has been wrong, science is not really proven beyond a shadow of a doubt, because science is our own creation. It's like, you have to prove we can trust our own logic through science, and how can you prove your own logic through science? You can't. You really can't even prove where logic, where reason, where intelligence, where a lot of things come from scientifically. There are things that exist outside of what science can actually prove. And so I made like this comparison, like, science is very limited to what it can actually measure and what it can actually study. Because in order for science to actually be objective, it has to be something that is observable, and it has to be something that is measurable. How do you measure logic? How do you observe logic? How do you observe reasoning? How do you measure reasoning? How do you observe intelligence? How do you measure intelligence? And these are all things that we understand exist in order for people to even do a scientific study. But you can't even prove those things scientifically. And so it just comes down to the point of, like, it's just like you're denying your reality. There's not any basis for your thoughts as an atheist, because you don't stand on an objective truth according to your own logic, because you deny intelligent design, you deny reason and logic behind things even coming to exist, or it's assumed based off of a process that is not actually objectively measurable, observable, things like that. Because, and this is why I said too, a lot of science is just throwing time to explain things that it doesn't actually understand. Well, we don't actually know for sure, but this happens over millions and billions of years. Just saying millions and billions of years make something possible is not actually rational, and no human has been around millions or billions of years, so where do we even get this idea from? I really just have to think, and this has never made sense to me logically speaking. How is it that humans, supposedly, according to evolution, been around for millions of years, but only in the past thousands of years were we able to, do science? And supposedly they're the same level, have the same level of intelligence. It really doesn't make sense. That's just another food for thought. But anyways, the other comparison I made, science is limited to understanding the world that we exist in, right? So I said, like, 2D can't prove 3D. 3D can't prove 4D. 4D can't prove 5D. A dimension, we exist in a dimension, right? We can prove things within our dimension. So 3D can prove 2D, 2D can prove 1D, but you can't prove something that is outside of the dimension that you exist in. So the belief in God is a belief in a God that exists outside of our current dimension. Why does God have to exist outside of our dimension? Because he created our dimension. You can create 3D from 4D, but you can't create 4D from 3D. It's just like something that exists out of your dimension. It's not possible for 3D to create 4D. And I don't know how else to actually explain that, other than it's just like it's like 3D does not, if 3D was 4D, it wouldn't be 3D. That sounds so circular, but it's just basically the when you think about dimensions, how can you prove a dimension that doesn't exist within your dimension? And so it's like God's existence is outside of what science would ever be able to prove, regardless, because God exists outside of the dimension that we are in. And so as a Christian, it's rational because it's just like God is greater than what he created, right? But to an atheist or someone who puts all of their faith, it's like being an atheist, you are limited in your thought. You're truly so limited in how you can think because you're only able to comprehend your dimension, essentially. It's like you're limited by the dimension that science exists, that I guess humans' creation of science exist in. But if there is, and there's like scientific proof of dimensions that are greater than ours, right? I mean, I don't know like the research. I remember in high school, my physics teacher tried to go through over string theory, which was essentially saying there's multiple dimensions, right? And I don't think it was saying like there's dimensions that are greater, but it was just saying there's multiple dimensions based off of just like, I don't know. String theory is I really honestly don't think our professor was supposed to be teaching us string theory, but because we never took a test on it, but he was just like a science. My teacher was just like a science geek and was like, let me try to teach these students, because I took STEM physics, which is like the more advanced physics class you could take in high school or at my high school. So anyways, he went in to try to explain string theory, and string theory is basically a theory that claims there's multiple dimensions within our universe, etc. But you can't prove a dimension outside of your own, or you can't observe a dimension that exists outside of your actual dimension. So anyways, basically, it's like you can't use something smaller. You can't use a smaller dimension to prove a greater dimension. So science will never have the ability to prove or disprove God. And if you know that as an atheist, why do you still make the basis of belief in God about science? It's like, that doesn't even make sense to me. Like, God's existence does not depend on science. Like, objectively speaking. I think about things from a point that's not just like, it's not even just scientifically, it's just like logically speaking. It's like there has to be an objective truth again. And I feel like atheists don't have a true objective truth. They just have scientific assumptions, scientific laws that they believe to be true. But in order to believe that to be true, you have to believe in an objective truth. But then they can't claim an objective truth, because if they claim objective truth, well, then now they have to go back through like, well, objectively speaking, you can't claim anything objectively with science because it disproves science, which makes like zero sense. But that's essentially the circular logic that atheists have to, I guess, say or claim, because they know atheism is not rooted in something that is objectively measurable or truth. Like, the creation of science is based off of humans' ability to do logic and reason, but scientifically you can't even prove those things. So it's like, like I said in the beginning, what's the point of even having an argument about something if you don't believe that logic or reasoning is objective? It just makes everything so pointless. Like I said, the cognitive dissonance that I feel like a lot of atheists must hold on to their disbelief. And this is what I really just say. It just comes down to it. Like, you don't need science to believe in God. That's not saying, like, scientifically you can't believe in God. It's just saying, like, belief in God is not something that you get to from a scientific approach, but it doesn't mean it's not logical or it's not rational. It's just like, I mean, it really is kind of more of like a philosophical thing, but I also think it comes from, like, it's just like there's a lot of things we know exist that we can't prove scientifically. And so if we know science can't even prove things that we know exist or that we feel or that we experience, if science can't prove things that exist in our actual world, how can we hold the idea that science is the end all be all of logic and reason? Or like science can have all the answers and you don't need, anything outside of it. It really is just like self-defeating. And at the end of the day, if you really think about it, science is pretty much just people trusting their brain. A brain they didn't create, they didn't design. It's just like, how do you know you can trust your thoughts? How do you know you can trust your brain? It's like, what makes you think you can actually even understand or begin to understand the world around us? It's like, what would give you the idea that you can trust your own logic, or that your brain is even intelligent, or that you even can understand the things around you? Like, what proof do you have that what you think is actually rational or is actually logical? Where does that come from? Which again is just like, there is no real science if there's no such thing as objective logic and reason. And we know that they have to exist in order for science to exist. Logic and reason have to exist, but you can't even prove science with logic and reason, or you can't even prove logic and reason scientifically. So it's just like, how do you even prove anything that what you're saying is true? It's like, how can you even argue as an atheist if you don't believe your logic and reasoning is even objective? Like, if your logic and reasoning is just subjective, then nothing you say actually matters, and nothing science discovers actually exists. Y'all get what I'm saying? I hope, like, people are understanding what I'm actually stating, but it's really just, like, one of the dumbest arguments I feel like I've seen. And then one of the, I think, really truly dumb things that he said is like basically trying to use semantics of language to say like, what is two, or math is subjective. Like, just because we didn't know what the square root of until we discovered you can do a square root doesn't mean the square root didn't exist. Like, when we do math, and I feel like this is one of the reasons I've always actually loved math, because math is objective. It's like, when you do a math problem, it's not subjective. It's not like the answer could be 3 or the answer could be 6. It's like, if you're doing this problem, the answer is objectively true. It's like, it's either 2 plus 2 is always 4. 2 plus 2 is not sometimes 5, not sometimes 3, not sometimes 70, not sometimes 5. Like, math is actually objective, and that was one of the things I really loved about math. And so to argue that math is subjective is actually crazy. But the reason he tried to argue that is because even admitting math was objective, he knew that the logic Frank Turek was going to go to is like, well, if math is objective, that means there's an objective truth. That means there's an objective intelligence outside of our own that we did not create. And atheists don't want to concede to that, because then it points to intelligent design and it points to a creator. And so it's like, atheists are aware of the logical flaws in their argument, but their cognitive dissonance won't allow them to accept that there could be a God. It's basically it's all just about, like, they don't want to believe in God. At the end of the day, that's what it comes down to. I've never thought for a second like someone's atheist just because there's not enough proof of God. They want proof of God to be scientific, and it's impossible for proof of God to be scientific. meaning like you are not going to be able to do a scientific experience ever to prove God's existence, because God's existence goes beyond what science will ever have the ability to prove. Like, proof of God exists in the miracles that science can't explain. Proof of God exists in the supernatural, because God's existence is supernatural. It's beyond our current dimension. So how do you think you can prove a supernatural being with natural logic? It's the supernatural. It takes supernatural proof to prove a supernatural God. And atheists think you can prove a supernatural God through natural proof. And it's like you can't use natural proof to prove the supernatural. Does that make sense to y'all? It's just like, I don't know. God's existence is not is outside of, it's just like God's existence is outside of our actual dimension. We can't prove its existence with using things within our dimension, because he exists outside of ours. So it takes something outside of what science will ever have the ability to prove, because science exists within our dimension, not outside of it. At least not that anyone could actually prove. But anyways, it just comes down to the point being that whether or not you believe in God, I really don't think it's about proof or science. It's really just about, a lot of people just don't want to believe in God, is what it comes down to. And that was what I had reacted to in another video, because I felt like, I wish I could remember his last name, but I felt like he wasn't being intellectually honest. And I think atheists do claim a lot of things that are intellectually dishonest in order to justify or rationalize atheistic logic and reasoning. Because again, it's too much cognitive dissonance to accept, even if you're aware that such things outside of the scientific realm exist in our reality, such as feelings, such as emotions, just such as consciousness, such as logic, such as reasoning, such as intelligence. These things cannot be proven by science, but an atheist can't argue those things exist objectively, because then they have to admit to something that points to intelligent design and something that they can't create. Like, it's just, again, it's the cognitive dissonance, I feel like, is what makes people say stupid things, because instead of, they don't want to change what they already believe to be true, which is they don't want God to exist. They don't want to believe in God. And so even if the proof of God was in their face, they don't want to accept it. It's like there's nothing stopping anyone from believing in God except themselves. If you could decide tomorrow, I believe in God, it's not something that someone can force on you. It's literally your choice. You choose to believe in God. I choose to believe in God, not because there's proof of him, but because I'd rather believe that there is someone way more intelligent, someone who actually knows all the answers. I just can't rationalize human beings being, like, if humans didn't create this world, how can we say that humans are the smartest thing on the planet? And we have to discover our own planet because we didn't understand it. Like, do y'all understand what I'm saying? Like, there's more intelligence within our world that exists. There's so much intelligence that exists outside of us that we didn't create, we didn't do. And it's just like so many things in our natural world just point to there being order, to there being design. It's just like, it just so happens everything necessary for life just exists here on Earth, but no other planets. I don't know. I just think, again, there's a lot of intellectual dishonesty, in my opinion, happening, a lot of cognitive dissonance, and what people do when they're biased to their belief system and they are met with, they're met with logic and things that they know are true, but they can't argue. they reject what they're being told, or they just, like I said, they start acting intellectually dishonest in order to hold on to their beliefs because they can't disprove that new information that goes against what they previously believed. And that's what a lot of atheists pretty much end up doing when they're arguing with these big questions that they really don't have a response to, because they don't want to concede what they previously believed. So it really is, at the end of the day, just cognitive dissonance. And cognitive dissonance is something that I can't prove, but we all can observe it. I can't prove it, but you feel it, you experience it when you hold two beliefs that are opposing to each other. So that's all I have to say about that. I'm about to take me a nap because I'm tired. I've been up since like 4 a.m. It's 4:22 p.m. I need to go to sleep. All right. That's all, guys.